We took a deeper dive into the salary moves made by Kent Hughes, and it reveals that he might just be a genius for the trades he pulled off. We'll be diving into exactly what the salary ramifications are and what the next move for the Habs probably is, plus a little bit of a talk on how Kent Hughes is completely changing the culture and the perception of the Montreal Canadiens. So you'll want to stick around for this edition of Habs Digest. Jesse, as we get into this topic, a quick reminder to hit subscribe if you're one of the thousands that hasn't done it already. If you like the videos, we appreciate you. His salary management is completely brilliant. Now, the first thing we're going to show is a little graphic of the trade. This is going back to the Erik Karlsson trade. Just looking, he sent out $5.6 million in Pitlick and Hoffman alone. And if you include the salary retained on Petrie, that's including shipping him off to Detroit after, and you include Casey DeSmith, that's 4.1. And if you also include Gustav Lindstrom's cap hit, you're at $5 million taken back with 5.6 shipped out. But the difference is, Jesse, you get Casey DeSmith, who's a usable player. You get a second and a fourth round draft pick. You get Nathan Legare for AHL depth. To me, before we dive into exactly the ramifications of this, just another surface level, I feel like people aren't talking enough about how this Habs somehow came out on top with this salary dump, but giving away Hoffman and Pitlick for almost nothing.
Yeah, Hoffman had to go. I was thinking of it's kind of two birds with one stone, that you free up some cap space and get the younger players, but it's actually... You actually hit three birds with one stone, because we needed to get rid of Hoffman. He just really doesn't fit for us of where we were really at, So I think that's huge, as that article kind of goes on to say, kind of freeing up the legs for Harvey Pinard. I mean, having a year like he did last year, 14 goals. You had to make a spot for him on the roster. And of course, thinking of just kind of work ethic and also even skill, I would say, like replacing Hoffman, with a player like Raphael Harvey Pinard, night in, night out from the beginning of the season, your team is definitely looking a lot different. But what's so genius about this, again, is that Kent Hughes, with all of his moves he's been doing lately, even though they might look underrated or kind of under the radar, it's all about the long-term play. It's all about that long-term goal, assessing where's our contention window, what cap space do we want to have available when it's really our time to compete for Lord Stanley, so that we can really get that blockbuster type of player. So that's what I like, is this kind of laying that groundwork that he's doing right now.
Yeah, and that's a perfect transition, talking about laying the groundwork for the long-term salary cap prospects. So what I'm going to do now is, a lot of you guys might not understand the implications of, because I didn't until I looked into this just today, and I consider myself a pretty big fan, the implications of starting the season with Carey Price on the active roster as opposed to LTIR. And I'm going to explain to you exactly how that works. So, whoops, not that. We already showed that. Let's show this. So, the Habs projected cap hit this year is $87 million. That includes everyone. You can see the projected cap space is minus $3.7 million. That means they're about 3.7, 3.8 above the salary cap right now, not including any long-term injury reserve. But you can see LTIR candidates, that's Carey Price, $10.5 million. So with Carey Price on the LTIR, if the season started today, the Habs would have $6.7 million in relief. But here's where the difference is. If you look at that projected cap space, and you look at the cap space with LTIR candidates, you might realize that basically, if you start the season with Carey Price on the LTIR, whatever amount you're over the cap, that's the amount of relief you get. So if the season started today, they'd get $6.7 million. But if they start the season with Carey Price on the active roster, they get cap relief equal to the amount they are below the cap, plus whatever Price's contract goes into that LTIR over the salary cap. So in essence, if Montreal finishes, say, $500,000 below the cap to start the season with Price on the active roster, they would get $10 million in LTIR relief for this season, and any season going forward, they did the same thing. And Jesse, I want to get your reaction to this as well, all this stuff, but the one thing I wanted to mention is, there's one player right at the bottom, Jake Allen, that would bring the Habs about $100,000 under the cap if they were able to move him without getting any salary back. Now, there's also guys like Dvorak and Armia where you can make it work, but to me, Jesse, we've heard so much rumblings about goalie trades. If we can move Jake Allen, start the season $100K under the cap, get $10.4 million in Carey Price's LTIR relief without having to be locked into that number because he wouldn't have gone in the offseason, I feel like that would just be master asset management.
And that's why it's so nice to look at the numbers sometimes, because they really kind of do tell a story, right? You'd have to think that making a Jake Allen trade to kind of get cap compliant and all that flexibility, like you said, that would be huge for the Habs. So there's a huge incentive to do that we've now brought in a goalie which could hypothetically replace Allen, right? So it seems like the writing kind of is on the wall. And we have mentioned, while Petrie seeming like good chance of going, and while we can't rule out a DeSmith trade, it seems much more likely it would be much more beneficial for many reasons for Jake Allen, right? It almost seems kind of redundant for Smith to kind of go and do a similar move as we did with Petrie when we kind of already know the market's a little bit saturated. So it's not about getting that huge return, but it's really about that longer term play and knowing our contention window, getting a couple draft picks when we can as well, right? Because I mean, we've shown what we can do in getting second round draft picks, even a fourth, like we got with the Penguins. Like, these are picks that we've used to get, players like Lane Hudson, etc. So I mean, you have to think that this is probably in all likelihood, the case at this point in time that Allen will probably be the one.
Yeah, and another note too, I don't know if it was made clear by me or not, but that would need to happen before the season starts. Because if the season starts with Allen still on the roster, the Habs aren't going to jump up to that $10.5 million in cap room, right? He would need to be gone before the season. You need to start the season with Price on the active roster. Because if you get to the season and the Habs are like today, that $6.7 million figure, even if you move Allen after, is locked in. So we think a Jake Allen trade is coming, but just thought it'd be interesting to share the numbers with you guys and let us know your opinions on who might get moved to get the Habs cap compliant. The other thing we wanted to talk about today, Jesse, is we talked about this a bit before, but there was a nice article written about Kent Hughes and how he's changing the perception in Montreal. And the main thing we wanted to show is Kent Hughes saying, I'm a believer in general, whether it's players or people, that you try to do the right thing, right? In this case, he called Jeff Gordon, explained this, Jeff Petrie, not Gordon, explained the situation. They're a family, they have kids. They wanted to make a trade to his hometown so the kids could get to school, right? He promised he wouldn't drag it out. We're trying to maximize every little value. Spoke with Jeff. He was thankful. It's important. It doesn't mean we will do things against the organization's interests, because he kind of admits that he didn't maybe get the return he could have got. But if we help ourselves and the player, we will do that. And that just sets such an amazing example. Of course, he's a player agent. He knows, like, when players are in free agency, they have certain traits about organizations that they really value when they're considering, hey, I want to go here, I want to go here. And what he is doing is he's trying to make these awesome characteristics that make free agents want to go to a destination. He wants to make those present in Montreal. And I think it's just adding to the brilliancy.
It's so true, and the public relations work that Kent Hughes is doing for this team is just absolutely so huge, and my opinion, not only is it that he's just setting such a good precedent for a team that has had trouble kind of getting those star players in the future. It's like, not only we accumulating the cap space, but we're also doing those moves, right? Playing that long-term game again. Definitely Kent Hughes, like you said, he's a big believer like in karma, and whether it's a player or a person, like treating them as they should be treated. And obviously that's great for an organization. It's a great look. And obviously it helps to be bringing players as well. But you have to think, like, for sure, he could have got more than a fourth round draft pick if he was to hold on to Petrie. But is getting more than a fourth round draft pick more important than blocking a roster spot from a young player on a rebuilding team? Absolutely not, right? So again, Kent Hughes is doing multiple good things with these moves here. But, again, it's just so important. You can't highlight that enough. Like, nowadays, in any type of organization, right, just having that good communication. There's a different way of doing things. Back in the NHL, back in the day, it didn't matter really as much how much GMs, treated their players, coaches. Now it matters. Players have a lot more power, and treating them well will do nothing but bring good things to your organization over time.
Yeah, and not only the young guys, but all the veterans, everything, right? Teams are built, you got some free agents, whether it's a blockbuster or not, like, having guys who want to be there, who, like, that's another thing too. If a player looks at the organization, they're like, man, I really want to play for them, whether or not it's because of the historical aspect of Montreal or just because it seems like an awesome place with awesome coaches, awesome management. If a player really, really wants to play for your organization, they're going to play hard, and they're going to have to fit in with the team, the organization's values. So I think what he's doing is just amazing, and I really hope that it leads to something really, really bright in Montreal's future. But that'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10,000. We'd really appreciate every one of your support. I'm Josh Gosse, for my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.